You ever notice how the world only starts watching after you've been through hell? Funny, isn't it, how they ignore you when you're breaking, but suddenly call you powerful once you survive it? Like pain was your audition, and now they're clapping? But here's the twist: you didn't just survive, you changed. Somewhere between the nights no one checked on you, and the mornings you forced yourself to get up anyway, something inside you rewired. You stopped begging for light and became it. Now people feel it when you walk in. They don't always understand it, but they feel it. That calm, that intensity, that strange kind of peace that only comes from fighting battles nobody saw. They call you a healer now. Not because you studied it. Not because you asked for it. But because you carry a kind of energy that doesn't just speak, it shifts things. You walk into chaos and somehow it softens. You speak, and broken people feel seen. That's not normal. That's not luck. That's what happens when someone turns their wounds into something the world can breathe through. And now the same world that once overlooked you is starting to realize exactly what you are. Pain didn't just visit you, it stayed. It unpacked its bags, made itself comfortable, and watched to see if you'd break under the weight of it. And for a while, maybe you did. Maybe there were moments where everything inside you felt like it was collapsing quietly, invisibly, while the world kept spinning like nothing was wrong. That's the funny thing about pain. It doesn't need an audience. It does its best work in silence, behind closed doors, in the spaces where no one thinks to look. You weren't given a choice. Not really. Nobody sat you down and asked if you were ready for it, if you were strong enough, if you even wanted to carry that kind of weight. It just happened. One hit after another. Loss, confusion, betrayal, doubt, layered so perfectly it almost felt intentional, like something was testing how much you could take before you disappeared. And maybe they expected you to disappear. Most people do when it gets that heavy. But you didn't. You bent, sure. You questioned everything. There were nights where your thoughts turned against you, where your own mind felt like a trap you couldn't escape. You replayed things over and over, wondering where it all went wrong, wondering if it was you, if you were the problem all along. That's what pain does. It makes you doubt your own reflection, makes you feel like a stranger in your own skin. And somewhere in that chaos, something started changing. Not loudly, not dramatically. No big moment where everything suddenly made sense. It was quieter than that, more dangerous in a way. You started adapting. You learned how to sit with discomfort instead of running from it. You learned how to survive your own thoughts, how to breathe through moments that once would have shattered you. You became familiar with the dark, not because you wanted to, but because you had no other option. That's where the shift began. Because pain, when it doesn't destroy you, it reshapes you. It carves out parts of you that were never meant to stay the same. It forces you to see things differently, to feel things deeper, to understand people in ways they don't even understand themselves. You started noticing things, little cracks in people's voices, the way someone hides their hurt behind a smile, the silence that screams louder than words ever could. You became aware, and awareness, that's power. Not the loud kind, not the kind that needs attention or validation. This is something else, something controlled, something that sits beneath the surface and watches, calculates, understands. You don't react the way you used to. You don't crumble at the same triggers. The things that once broke you now barely shake you. That didn't come from nowhere. That came from everything you went through when nobody was watching. Every tear you hid, every breakdown you masked, every time you told yourself to keep going when stopping felt easier. You built something in those moments, piece by piece, without even realizing it. Not perfection, not invincibility, something more real than that, resilience. And it's different from what people think. It's not about being unbreakable. You've already been broken. That part's done. Resilience is what happens after, when you gather those scattered pieces and decide, consciously or not, to put them back together in a way that makes you harder to destroy next time. You don't fear pain the same way anymore. You recognize it. You understand it. And that understanding gives you an edge most people will never have, because they spend their whole lives trying to avoid what you've already faced head-on. They run from discomfort. You've learned how to walk through it, sit with it, even use it. That's the part they don't see. They see the version of you now, the composed one, the calm one, the one who seems grounded, steady, almost untouchable. They don't see the process. They don't see what it took to get here. And if they did, they probably wouldn't survive it the way you did, because pain didn't just hurt you, it trained you. Silence, it's not empty the way people think. It's crowded, loud in its own twisted way. It fills your head with everything you've been avoiding, everything you pushed aside when the noise of the world was still there to distract you. And when that noise disappears, when the calls stop, the messages fade. The room gets still, that's when it starts talking. At first, it feels like abandonment. Like you've been left out of something everyone else is a part of. You start questioning your place, your worth, wondering why it's so quiet around you while everyone else seems surrounded by voices, by attention, by connection. It messes with you. Makes you feel invisible, like you're fading in a world that only notices what's loud. But silence isn't neglect. It's pressure. It traps you with yourself, forces you to face thoughts you'd rather outrun. There's no applause here, no reassurance, no one telling you you're doing okay. Just you, and everything you've been carrying. The doubts get sharper in the quiet. The memories replay with more detail. Regret sounds clearer when there's nothing else to drown it out. Most people can't handle that. They reach for anything to escape it. Noise, distractions, people. Anything that keeps them from sitting alone with what's inside their own head. Because silence doesn't lie. It strips everything down, exposes what's real and what's not. And if you're not ready for that, it can break you faster than any chaos ever could. But you stayed, even when it got uncomfortable. Even when your own thoughts turned against you, whispering things you didn't want to hear. You didn't always fight them. Sometimes you just sat there, letting it all hit, letting it all sink in. And slowly something shifted. You started listening differently. Not to the noise, but to the patterns. You began to notice where your thoughts came from, why certain things triggered you, why certain memories still held weight. You started connecting things, realizing that the pain, the reactions, the habits, they weren't random. They were built, learned, conditioned. That realization changes everything, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. Silence gave you that, not comfort, not peace at first, clarity. The kind that cuts deep but shows you exactly what needs to be understood. You stopped needing constant validation because there was no one there to give it. You stopped relying on outside noise to define you because, in silence, there's nothing external to lean on. So you built something internal, a voice that doesn't panic under pressure, a mind that observes instead of immediately reacting. You became more aware of your own emotions, not controlled by them, but familiar with them. You could feel anger without losing yourself in it. Feel sadness without letting it consume you entirely. That's not weakness. That's control. And it didn't come from comfort. It came from being alone with your own mind long enough to understand it. Most people don't get that far. They avoid silence their entire lives, afraid of what it might reveal. But you didn't have that luxury. You were placed in it, forced to sit, to listen, to endure. And in that space, you sharpened. Your patience grew without you noticing. Your tolerance for discomfort stretched further than you thought possible. You learned how to exist without constant stimulation, without needing to be seen or heard all the time. That's rare. Dangerous, even, because someone who's comfortable in silence isn't easily manipulated by noise. You don't chase attention the same way. You don't react to every little thing thrown at you. You pause. You think. You observe. And that pause, that space between reaction and response, that's where your strength lives now. That's what silence gave you. Not emptiness, but discipline. Not loneliness, but awareness. Not weakness, but a kind of strength that doesn't need to announce itself to be real. It's strange how you spent so much of your life waiting for someone to show up. Not in some dramatic, heroic way. Just quietly. Someone who understood. Someone who noticed when you went quiet for the wrong reasons. Someone who knew how to say the right thing when your mind started turning against you. You weren't asking for perfection. Just presence. Just something real in a world that felt disconnected. And for a long time, it didn't come. Or maybe it came in fragments. In people who stayed just long enough to make you believe, then left before it mattered. In words that sounded good, but didn't hold up when things got heavy. In moments that felt like support, until you realized you were still carrying everything on your own. That does something to you. It teaches you, slowly and painfully, that waiting can become a trap. That expecting someone else to fix what's breaking inside you is a gamble most people lose. Not because people are evil, but because most of them are too busy fighting their own battles to carry yours too. So you stopped waiting. Not all at once. Not in some grand decision where everything suddenly made sense. It was gradual, subtle. You started picking yourself up in small ways. When something hurt, you didn't always run to someone anymore. Sometimes you just sat with it, tried to understand it, tried to calm it down without needing an outside voice to tell you how. At first, it felt wrong, like you were missing something, like you were supposed to need more, to depend more, to reach out more. That's what you've been taught, right? That strength comes from connection, from support, from having someone there. And while that's true, there's another side to it that no one really talks about. What happens when that support isn't there? What happens when you're left with nothing but yourself? Most people break, but you adapted. You started becoming the voice you once needed. The reassurance you used to search for in others, you began giving it to yourself. Not perfectly. Not every time, but enough to make a difference. You learned how to talk yourself through moments that used to overwhelm you. Learned how to calm your own thoughts when they started spiraling. Learned how to sit in your own discomfort without immediately needing someone to pull you out of it. That's not isolation. That's transformation. Because somewhere along the way, you stopped seeing yourself as someone who needed saving and started seeing yourself as someone capable of surviving, capable of understanding, capable of healing, even if it wasn't always clean or easy. You became more patient with yourself, more aware of your own patterns, more forgiving of your own flaws. And that changes how you move through the world. You don't cling to people the same way anymore. Not because you don't care, but because you've learned that your stability doesn't have to depend on someone else's presence. You can appreciate people without needing them to complete you. You can value connection without losing yourself in it. That's power most people never develop, because it requires you to face yourself fully, to accept the parts of you that aren't easy to love, to sit with your own thoughts long enough to understand them, instead of running from them. And once you do that, once you build that relationship with yourself, everything shifts. You stop chasing validation the way you used to. You stop over-explaining your worth. You stop trying to force yourself into spaces that don't recognize what you bring, because you already know. You've seen what you're capable of when everything else falls away. You've been in those moments where there was no one else to rely on, and you still found a way to keep going. That kind of experience rewires you. It builds a level of self-trust that doesn't come from success, it comes from survival. And now, when people look at you, They don't always understand why you seem so grounded, why you don't panic the way others do, why you don't crumble under pressure the same way. They don't see that you've already been through the kind of moments that force you to either become your own support or lose yourself completely. And you made a choice. Whether you realized it or not, you became what you once needed. There's something about you now, something people can't quite explain. They feel it before you even say a word. It's not loud, not flashy, not the kind of presence that demands attention. It's quieter than that, but heavier. Like the air shifts just a little when you walk in, like something unseen just adjusts, and that makes people uncomfortable. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because most people are used to surface-level energy, quick smiles, empty conversations, predictable reactions. They know how to navigate that. They know what to expect. But you're different now. You don't respond the way they think you will. You don't react to things that used to trigger you. You don't chase the same validation, the same noise, the same approval. So they watch. They study you in small ways, trying to figure out what it is, why your silence feels louder than their words, why your calmness doesn't seem forced, why your presence feels steady, grounded, almost like you're anchored in something they can't see. That's energy, not the kind people throw around in casual conversations. Not some trend or buzzword. This is built, earned, shaped by everything you've been through and everything you didn't let destroy you. It's in the way you carry yourself now, the way you don't rush, the way you don't panic under pressure, the way you can sit in a room full of chaos and still remain composed. People feel that, even if they don't understand it, especially those who are used to control, to manipulation, to getting reactions out of others. You don't give them that anymore. You don't feed into the same patterns. And that throws them off. Because when someone can't predict you, they can't easily influence you. That's where your power sits. In the space between what people expect from you and what you actually give. You're not performing anymore. Not adjusting yourself just to fit into someone else's version of what's acceptable. You've seen what happens when you lose yourself trying to be understood. So now you move differently, more intentional, more aware, more controlled. And it shows in your tone, in your body language, in the way you listen more than you speak, in the way you choose your words instead of throwing them out carelessly. There's weight behind everything you do now, even in the smallest actions. That kind of presence doesn't come from confidence alone. It comes from experience, from knowing what it feels like to be shaken, and learning how to steady yourself anyway. From understanding your own emotions well enough that they don't spill over uncontrollably. From being aware of your environment without being consumed by it. You've developed a kind of emotional awareness that most people haven't even begun to tap into. You can sense shifts in energy, pick up on tension that others ignore, recognize when something feels off, even if nothing obvious is wrong. That's not imagination. That's the result of being forced to pay attention, to survive situations where missing those signs would have cost you. So now, without even trying, you influence the space around you. Your calm can settle someone else's anxiety. Your presence can make people feel seen or exposed. Your silence can make someone reflect or feel uneasy. That's impact. And the interesting part is you don't have to announce it. You don't have to prove it. It happens naturally, because it's part of who you've become. The way you've been shaped has created something in you that interacts with the world differently. People either feel safe around it or threatened by it, because real energy doesn't beg for attention. It changes things without asking for permission. Healing people like to dress it up like it's something soft, peaceful, clean, like you wake up one day and everything just makes sense, like the pain fades quietly into the background and you move on with some kind of graceful acceptance. That's not how it worked for you. There was nothing pretty about it. No clear path, no gentle guidance. It was messy, confusing. Some days it felt like progress. Other days it felt like you were right back where you started. Like everything you thought you understood just slipped through your fingers again. Because healing isn't linear. It circles back. It reopens things you thought were closed. It forces you to feel things you tried to bury. And that's the part most people avoid. They want the result, not the process. They want relief without confrontation. Peace without facing what's actually broken. You didn't get that option. You had to face it. Piece by piece. Memory by memory. Feeling by feeling. Things you ignored for years suddenly demanded attention. Old wounds didn't stay quiet anymore. They surfaced in unexpected ways. Through your reactions, your thoughts, your habits. You started realizing that some of the ways you were coping weren't helping anymore. That realization hits hard because it means taking responsibility for parts of yourself you didn't even choose to create. Patterns you developed just to survive, now standing in your way, and it's easy to get stuck there. To blame yourself. To feel like you're broken in a way that can't be fixed. But something in you refused to settle for that. You started questioning things. Not just what happened to you, but how it shaped you. Why certain things affected you the way they did. Why some triggers felt stronger than others. You became curious about your own mind instead of just reacting to it. That's where healing begins. Not in avoidance. Not in pretending everything is fine. But in understanding. In being willing to look at yourself honestly, even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable. You didn't do it perfectly. There were moments you slipped back into old habits. Moments where the pain felt just as fresh as it ever did. Moments where you thought, maybe nothing has changed. Maybe all this effort doesn't matter. But it did. Even when you couldn't see it. Because healing isn't always visible in big ways. Sometimes it's in the pause before you react. In the way you catch a thought before it spirals. In the decision to step back, instead of diving into something that used to pull you under. Those small shifts, they add up. They change how you experience yourself, how you respond to the world, how you carry your past without letting it control your present. You started creating space between who you were and who you're becoming. And in that space, something steady started forming. A kind of inner balance. Not perfect, not unshakable, but real. Something you can return to when things get overwhelming. Something that reminds you that you're not as fragile as you once felt, that you can handle discomfort without losing yourself completely. That's not something you learned from outside. No one handed it to you. You built it. Through every moment you chose to face what hurt instead of running from it. Through every time you sat with your emotions instead of suppressing them. Through every decision to understand yourself instead of judging yourself. That's why it feels natural now. Not easy, but familiar. Healing isn't something you visit anymore. It's something you live with. Something that moves with you, grows with you, adjusts as you do. It's become part of how you process things, how you think, how you respond. Not something separate, but something integrated into who you are. And that changes everything about how you exist in the world. Because you're not just surviving anymore. You're restoring parts of yourself that most people never even realize they've lost. It's different now, the way people look at you. There's a pause in it, a hesitation, like they're trying to figure something out without asking the question out loud. Before, you could blend in, move through spaces unnoticed, overlooked, underestimated. That kind of invisibility, it protected you in a way, kept expectations low, kept pressure off. That's gone now. You can feel it. In conversations that shift when you speak. In the way people listen a little more closely, even when you're not saying much. In the subtle change in how you're treated. Not always better, not always worsey, just different. Like there's an awareness now that wasn't there before. They see something. Not all of it. Not the full story. But enough to know you're not the same. And recognition, it's not always comfortable. Because it comes with attention, with expectation, with people projecting things onto you that you didn't ask for. Some will admire it, be drawn to it, want to understand how you became this version of yourself. Others, they'll question it, doubt it, try to minimize it because it makes them reflect on their own place, their own growth, their own choices. That's how it works. When someone evolves in a way that can't be ignored, it forces the people around them to either grow or react. And not everyone chooses growth. So you start noticing patterns. The ones who genuinely respect the change, they don't need explanations. They just feel it and accept it. There's no tension there. No need to prove anything. They meet you where you are, without trying to pull you back into who you used to be. Then there are the others. The ones who remember you differently. Who expect the same reactions, the same behavior, the same version of you they were comfortable with. And when they don't get that, it unsettles them. They might not say it directly, but it shows. In the way they test you. In the way they try to provoke old responses. In the way they question your growth without fully understanding it. But you don't fold the same way anymore. You notice it, and you choose differently. That's the part they don't expect. Because recognition isn't just about being seen. It's about being understood. And most people only understand what's familiar to them. What fits into their expectations. When you step outside of that, when you become something they didn't predict, they struggle to place you. And you've learned not to shrink yourself just to make that easier for them. That's where your presence becomes undeniable. Not because you're trying to stand out, but because you're no longer trying to fit in. You've stopped adjusting your depth to match shallow environments. Stopped explaining your mindset to people who aren't ready to hear it. Stopped diluting yourself just to keep things comfortable. And that creates distance, not always physical, but energetic. A gap between you and people who can't meet you where you are. It's not arrogance. It's alignment. You're no longer forcing connections that don't feel right. You're no longer ignoring what you sense just to maintain familiarity. That awareness changes your interactions. You become more selective, more intentional with your time, your words, your energy. Not closed off, just precise. You give where it's reciprocated. You engage where there's depth. And where there isn't, you don't force it. People notice that. They feel the difference, because most are used to easy access, to surface-level connections that don't require much. You're not operating like that anymore. There's a standard now. Not something you announce, but something that's felt in the way you move. And with that comes a certain kind of respect, even from those who don't fully understand you, because there's something about consistency, about quiet confidence, about someone who knows themselves without needing constant validation, that stands out in a world full of noise. You've become that without trying to. Not through words, but through experience. Through everything you've faced, everything you've processed, everything you've chosen to grow through instead of collapse under. And now, whether people admit it or not, they see it, they recognize it, they feel it in ways they can't always explain, and that changes how they approach you, how they respond to you, how they exist around you,